as the world's first light bulb flickered to life in a candlelit room. From the first wheel to studying the first star, we've come so far. From telephones to railway tracks stretching their arms around urban cities, humanity has sure come a long way.
To move forward, we must look back. We must look back at the memories that shape our becoming, the memories that usher us into life.
I know about origins, about holy curiosity and deep-founded desires to escape poverty.
The airplane, penicillin, sonar and spacecrafts. They say technology has been miraculous in letting us thrive.
Los tiempos han cambiado. Dijimos adiós a una sola manera de aprender lo que nos rodea y la tecnología nos ha abierto los ojos a un mundo en el que las fronteras desaparecen y las oportunidades de colaborar prevalecen.
No more regurgitating facts from seas of text that drown innovative minds, or clamoring to sit in front of the class to see the homework the chalkboard assigns. Children will truly become explorers, traversing space and time, taking man's first step on Mars, and debating theories with Einstein.
I know about opportunity, about possibility, about this moment right here and how we have the chance to rewrite history.
Hoy alzamos nuestras voces para reconocer a la tecnología como una aliada en nuestro camino.
I dare to dream of a world where no person would be left behind, where words would be our brightest torch.
Let us believe in our ability to create light out of the night. How with technology, we have lifted burdens and implemented dreams. Pẹ̀lú ìmọ̀ ẹ̀rọ, àwọn ọmọ wa á kọ́ ẹ̀kọ́ ìrọ̀rùn.
No waiting for miracles, we must burn, slip and slide and turn till we build the future our children truly deserve. Are we learning? Are we listening?
All right. Good afternoon and welcome all to our discussion today in the UNICEF Education breakout session here at the Rewired Education. My name is Mina Al-Arabi. I'm your moderator today. I'm also the editor-in-chief of The National based here in the UAE. Part of our discussion is centered around UNICEF's flagship initiative called Reimagine Education. And they have a very ambitious target to reach every child with digital learning by 2030. And while, of course, it has its challenges and obstacles, it's also incredible opportunity. And we're here today with both my panelists here, but also we will have, hopefully, interventions from other speakers in different locations who will tell us about their experiences. We want to look at how we can scale up digital learning, what learnings we've had, and we have great representation from different geographies, but also from different sectors. But before we begin, we have a message here from Ms. Henrietta Fore, UNICEF Executive Director, in the video that will play now, and then we will continue our discussion.
Distinguished guests and colleagues, I am delighted to welcome you today to UNICEF's flagship session, Reimagine Education, Digital Learning for Every Child by 2030. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on children's learning cannot be overstated. Despite our best efforts, only 1 in 3 children affected by school closures was able to access remote learning. This is a stark reminder that the digital and gender divides that existed before the pandemic have only deepened. At UNICEF, we are working to scale up world-class digital learning solutions for children everywhere, especially the most marginalized. By 2030, we want every child and every young person, some 3.5 billion, to be able to access quality, tailored, and affordable content. The fact that you have joined us here today shows we are not alone. We know you share our ambition to rewire and reimagine education, delivering truly revolutionary and transformational change. This will not be easy, but we start with strong foundations, global solidarity, commitment, knowledge, and the lessons we have learned, especially during the pandemic. Now it is up to all of us to work together to drive change with speed and scale. We must finally bridge the digital divide that deprives millions of children of opportunities. As we heard from the young poets today, time is waiting for no one. Change and advances in technology are unstoppable. The ambitions, dreams, and hopes of this generation are unstoppable, and we must match these hopes with concrete actions. So let us make good on our promises. Let us transform and reimagine education for every child. Thank you.
And so that's the challenge, to meet the aspirations of young men and women, boys and girls around the world. And so now we go to our panel. I will introduce our panelists. We have with us at the very end His Excellency Dr. Tariq Shouqi, Minister of Education, Technical Education from Egypt. We have, after that, Mr. Robert Jenkins, Director of Education and Adolescent Development at UNICEF. And we also have Mr. Olusegun Ogunsanya, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Airtel Africa. But we're also going to be joined by a number of speakers virtually. So let's hope in our effort to speak about digital education, we're able to make this digital connection. We're hoping to hear from Ms. Ha-An Phong, who's a high school teacher from the Phu Tho province in Vietnam, and who was among the 10 finalists for the Global Teacher Prize in 2020. She will be joined by her English student, Nhu Yan Ha Q Yen, a 16-year-old in grade 11. And I'm going to start with them first, if we are connected, but I cannot see them at the moment, because we're really keen to know from them the experience in Vietnam. Ms. Phong is known as an Industry 4.0 teacher, and she's an active member of the Microsoft educational community of global teachers that basically designs lessons and engages in professional development. We want to hear from her and her student. However, until we connect her, if you will allow me, I will turn to Dr. Shouqi. And, you know, Egypt has one of the largest education systems in the world, but is also, you work at the intersection of education and technology. So as minister leading the education policy, what are the most important measures you've taken to transform the education system in Egypt?
Well, that's a tough question. I think the first measure, the most important, is the desire, the political will that existed back in 2014 to revolutionize Egypt altogether. Education is part of that, and as you can see, the road of recovery after the Arab Spring, which started in 2014, started with a leadership that believes in investing in the human element, parallel to all other developmental efforts. Acknowledging that without talented new generations, we cannot even maintain what we have now. So this is very clear from day one, and it was exemplified in the vision that we are heading towards an Egyptian learning society, not even knowledge society, a learning society, that the subtitle is a society that learns, thinks, and innovates. So the keywords here are about learning, are about innovation. And that was the basis for the reform. I wouldn't call it a reform. We are really reimagining our education system entirely, trying to have a modern version suited for those who are in nursery at this point, and trying to kind of imagine what the jobs will be like 15, 16 years later. What kind of skills that are safe to work on that will help them regardless of the unexpected that will happen. What kinds of degrees? So we're really addressing fundamental questions. I think the classical education system that we all went through, in my opinion, have expired. We have to rethink that. We have to rethink how long should a degree be alive and kicking? I mean, would we put expiration date on degrees? Like, I graduated from engineering back in '79. I wonder, that piece of paper on the wall, what does it mean? I mean, engineering has advanced as one's field so much. So was I able to learn during that time? Am I a better engineer or a lesser engineer? Or now make that analogy to doctors, to lawyers, to anybody. So with that, we were trying to rethink what is meant by education. So we went really to the roots of this. Why are we going to school? What should we do? Should we have blended learning? Should we have, that's even before COVID. We invested in technology. We wanted to reach every child, poor and rich, and offer the same good quality education. And that was the driving force. The driving force is we want a better country. A better country cannot happen without better citizens, more educated. The competition around the world, a global open world like ours now, requires a real deep set of skills that could help you, and combined with a culture that also embedded in it respect for the other, respect for difference, and knowing how to communicate with others. And that's all were big ingredients of our new education system. So it's not just about knowledge. It's about knowledge and character building and behavior, and the skills we seek are but collaboration and diversity and respect for others, as well as critical thinking and problem solving. But those are the life skills. We worked very hard with UNICEF on identifying those and working on them since day one. So that the desire that keeps us kicking, keeps us trying against resistance, is we want a better future for our kids.
I just want to follow up on that, because that takes time. And so in some ways, as you said, Egypt is going through incredible transformation. And so in the short term, you need to make changes, but also you're investing for the long term. So when you're making decisions and policy decisions on these changes and innovations in education, how are you dealing with the short term and the longer term?
Well, you know very well that this is a hard decision for any politician. Because this is not a quick win. This is something, as you said, transformations in societies take dedication, take an agreement, joint agreement between all parties that we all want to do that. But here the political will was there. We are all sharing this passion to do it, but it's not a quick win. People started to realize that this is good, although there are some huge resistance nonetheless, because obviously you're trying to transform. You're talking to people who are the products of the system you want to change, and they are the parents of the kids we want to apply the new thing to. So here we have a paradox. We have mom who is coming from a background that we want to change, so we have to talk to her to make sure she understands that this is better than what she learned. And that's our biggest challenge, is to do that transformation. Once we are all on the same wavelengths, we'll push at a faster speed. But this is, in the short term, we have to really reach the parents and the teachers and the adults to make them open, give freedom to the kids to learn the new way. I think we are suffocating the kids as adults by trying to expect them to behave like we did, which they will not. So we have to let them be themselves.
Thank you, Dr. Shouqi. I want to turn to you, Mr. Ogunsanya, because I want to ask you, there's education, there's society, and of course, one of the biggest changes for young people, for all of us, but particularly for young people, is connectivity. And when we're talking about digital learning, an incredible and most essential tool is having that connectivity. So I want to ask you about the role of mobile network operators in your position, but also telecommunications industry to facilitate that, and what role you see to bring the education sector into this period of rapid transformation.
Good afternoon, and happy to be here. Let me take a cue from what the Director General said during our opening remarks, that the pandemic actually caused a lot of disruption to the education of so many children. In the last 2 years, we've had this disruption in about 150 countries. About 1.6 billion children came out of school. They couldn't continue their education because of pandemic. I think we need to redefine education beyond being an ecosystem of teachers, students, resources within the four walls of a classroom. That was education 20, 30 years ago. In the new paradigm now, we need to begin to look for new ways of imparting knowledge, new ways of teaching our children without having the constraints of four walls of a classroom. That is where mobile network operators come in, because we provide connectivity. And for most children in today's world, they connect to the internet on mobile devices. They are mobile-only, mobile-first generation. That's who they are. Let me share some statistics with you as to why I think we need to break those barriers, the barriers preventing so many people from having access to digital education. There are 3 or 4 barriers, and I'm going to explain where we come in. The first one is about access. If you look at mobile internet around the world, about 96% of the population is covered by mobile internet. 6% are not covered. But this 6% is unevenly distributed. Most of those who are not covered by mobile internet, they live in low and medium income countries, basically in Africa and Asia. Let me give you an example. In sub-Saharan Africa, where I come from, about 19% of the population are not covered by mobile internet. They've got no access to mobile internet. 19%, 19. So the role of mobile network operator, like the company I work for, is to provide that connectivity, at least to bridge that divide between those who are digitally included and those who are digitally excluded. That's the first thing we can do. The second thing, even when we provide that mobile internet cover, there's lack of awareness. They're not aware that there's access to the internet. They're not aware there's even digital education. So the second thing we can do is to teach and inform those people, especially those who are living in communities in low and medium income countries. There is digital education, the tools are available, there's coverage, and these are the ways you can access these new ways of teaching. The third one, which is probably the most important, is that of affordability. Even when there's mobile coverage, when there's education, the children, the parents are simply not able to afford either the cost of the data or the cost of the mobile device that would consume the data. They're just too expensive for most of them. That's why what we're doing with UNICEF is so important. My company, Airtel Africa, we signed a 5-year partnership with UNICEF, $57 million, covering cash and support in kind. What are you doing with this money? We're working with UNICEF to provide 2 things. One, access, that I mentioned is one of the barriers. We're providing access to schools to have connectivity. And the second thing, to address the third concern, which is affordability, we're making access free for most children. We're doing this in 13 of our countries in Africa. We operate in 14 countries. In 13 of those 14 countries, we look forward to working with UNICEF to provide access and to also provide zero-rated access so that children of poor families don't have to worry because they've got no money to pay for access to education. Personally, I believe that in today's world, illiteracy should not be a permanent feature of any civilization. It should all come together, a triangle of civil societies, government, mobile network operators should come together and create a more democratic way of imparting knowledge to the children. They are the future of this world.
That's really great to hear, especially about your partnership with UNICEF, because one of the key issues is trying to bridge the gaps that exist and the point of cost. So even where there is coverage, it's the cost of data, predominantly data, because that's what's needed for education. So what steps would you recommend to reduce the cost of that data for educational purposes?
I think you should start with the triangle of 3 actors I described: the mobile network operators, the government, and happy that the Minister for Education in Egypt is here. I think our government should stop seeing spectrum, because that's a major resource for creating connectivity, as a revenue activity. It should be seen as an enabler that will create a lot more multiplier impact on the society. When you begin to ask mobile network operators to pay so much for spectrum, which is a very scarce resource, but it's required for creating access. It takes a lot of resources away from what is required to actually create the connectivity. So my appeal to the minister and some governments around the world is to make the cost of spectrum easily affordable to mobile network operators so they can spend a whole chunk of their resources in creating the mobile coverage that is required to create more even access to internet by most people. The second thing we need to do is to create standards. Make sure we don't lower the standards by digitizing education. The standards should not fall. That's also where ministries of education, different people should come together and create the standards that will ensure that we maintain quality. The third one is also equally important. We have bullying in school. We don't want bullying online. We should have regulations that will prevent children from being bullied online as well. We don't want to say because we are providing easy access through digital means, then children should be bullied online. Those are the three key requirements that we all need to work together to create what I call a sweet spot for children in low and medium income countries to access education that most of you are used to.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So to continue with this theme of connectivity and learning, we have a video from Ms. Zuhra Yermesh, who is the head of Connect to Learn at Ericsson. So we'll listen to her before we continue our discussion.
At Ericsson, we've been for more than a decade consistently promoting digital education through our partnerships and our flagship education program, Connect to Learn, that we deployed across more than 30 countries around the world. We believe that access to the internet is a basic human need, including for children. So with the internet service providers, we bring meaningful digital connectivity to education institutions and in parallel equip teachers with digital tools and skills. We empower children and young people from underserved communities from India to South Africa and Brazil with digital skills essential for their socio-economic development. Furthermore, through our employee base, we mentor girls on the use of technology to be leaders and problem solvers in their lives and their communities. Ericsson's ambition is to reach 1 million children and young people by 2025 with access to digital tools, content and training, partnering with like-minded organizations, fostering diversity and equity above all, in order to contribute to preparing the digitally skilled workforce of the future.
Thank you very much. So with that, thinking about the workforce of the future, we have, hopefully we'll be able to connect with the team from Zimbabwe Learning Project, where they have an offline learning project in Zimbabwe. But if not, I'm going to come straight to you, Robert, if that's okay with you. And you can tell us about some of the practices and the learnings UNICEF has had from the different operations that they've had in different countries until we connect with our colleagues in Zimbabwe. So this idea of what are the key lessons you've learned in having these pilot projects, but also the period of acceleration that we faced during the pandemic?
Thanks, and it's great to be here and great to be with such esteemed panelists. I really appreciate this opportunity. Well, I mean, over the last couple of days, I think we've all been participating in and heard a lot of big ideas, the need for transformation, the need for restarting education, leapfrogging, etc. That's the spirit of this discussion here. And reimagining education is very bold. All children and youth, 3.5 billion by 2030, access to world-class education. But when you have people like His Excellency, the Minister of Education from Egypt, and the CEO of Airtel, committed and joining up hands with UNICEF and with others, you can recognize that the potential to actually realize this vision of transformation is actually possible. I must admit, I get quite frustrated with innovations that are very exciting, but still relatively small scale, when we know the need is so enormous. And so, I mean, as Mr. Ongunsaya mentioned, 1.6 billion children had their schooling disrupted at the time of COVID, or learning poverty rates moving up to 70%. So we're talking hundreds of millions of kids that need, and therefore we've got big, very influential partners. The good news is I think we do now actually have Zimbabwe, and then I'll pick up after that. Yeah, please. They're going to be far more interesting.
Wonderful. So we've got our colleagues, we've got Dr. Oyewale and Ms. Abrisharnian. Thank you. It's good to see you. We weren't sure if we'll get you. So Thank you for being here. And we're really excited to learn about the Zimbabwe Learning Passport and offline learning, passport in Zimbabwe. So if you can tell us about your experience and what we can see from that experience in terms of children getting the education that's required while using the innovation that Robert was just speaking to.
Thank you very much for having us on the call. And it's unfortunate that the video we had prepared to show how the classrooms actually operate offline is not being played. But for us in Zimbabwe, we're prone to a lot of climate-induced emergencies. You may recall that in 2019, we had a cyclone Idai that destroyed a lot of schools and kept children out of school. And the same as the story with COVID-19. About 4.6 million children are currently impacted by school closures and non-return back to school due to COVID measures. So because of that, we did launch the Learning Passport in March this year in the country. And during implementation, it was obvious to us that the digital divide is going to further worsen the disparities amongst children. And that was why we engaged with Microsoft and other actors to put in place the offline version. The offline version is like a device that you have in the classroom or in the school that can cover something close to a Wi-Fi kind of connectivity of up to 300 meters. So what we've done with that is that once the materials are loaded on that piece of device, one is able to connect devices within that radius, and you don't need to have continuous connection to the internet to make that work. This has worked well. Because with that kind of approach, we've been able to bridge the digital divide. We've been able to connect children in schools that have little or no connectivity at all to learning using the Learning Passport. In the video we had, it would have been nice to see how the science lessons were being done by the children. As I go forward and I heard what was said by my colleague, Segun Ogunsanya from Airtel Africa, cost is a big issue. In addition to the whole issue of continuity of learning and the cost of bandwidth, zero rating, those are the key issues that mobile network operators have come in to help. In Zimbabwe, Econet and OneTel network have been very helpful. And we also commend Airtel Africa for what they do jointly with UNICEF across the continent. Now, going forward for us in Zimbabwe, we are expanding. Specifically, the first thing we are doing now is that we are doing solarization of schools with support from FCDO UK. And the intent is that once we bring in power to school, that already is a prerequisite for us to then roll out the connectivity to internet. And when we have challenges with connectivity, we'll introduce and scale up this offline model that we have been able to pilot successfully and use that to upscale continuous learning. So our commitment is that irrespective of the cause of the disruption in school, be it COVID, cyclone, conflict, or whatever, there will be a modality for children to learn. And I'm pleased to end by saying that the government has already approved a blended learning approach for which the Learning Passport is critical to that. So for us, the Learning Passport is one of the key ways of keeping kids engaged, irrespective of the context and situation. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have quite a bit of participation here, so we want to give the chance to anybody from the floor that may want to pose a question, particularly to the two colleagues who are in Zimbabwe at the moment and can tell us more about the Learning Passport as a digital learning tool. So does anybody have a question they would like to pose? Gentleman there, if we can please get him a mic. Okay.
Well, good luck to the translator if I try using weird British English. So thank you for your presentations. So one thing I'm really curious about is it seems like we have so many actors, with UNICEF and Learning Passport, with different, Calibri, or even my own startup, with various education platforms, and we're all pushing platforms. Yet I hear so very little about technical standards by which these platforms can interoperate, and that to me is quite unfortunate because if we can't take content from one platform, let's say in Kenya, that might be useful to, let's say, Zimbabwe, then we are going to run into some major technical inefficiencies. So what are you guys going to do to, bring interoperability to the top of the conversation where it belongs?
Thanks, great question. So I think it's very important for tools to be very diverse and inclusive of the file formats, levels, technical issues. I won't get too far into the weeds, but the Learning Passport, Microsoft partnership with UNICEF, is one of those tools. It can actually take a whole wide range of formats, different platform, and include those so that children are able to access a very wide range of world-class, but also locally produced and context-specific information. So that's definitely the solution. I can't agree with you more. If it's too narrow, it's going to constrain our scale.
Thank you for that. If we still have, and I hope we still have Ms. Nikki Abrishamian in Harare with us, it would be great also to hear from her thinking about this, the sharing and the learnings, but also having the technical platforms that are at least unified, if they, within one country or even from between countries. So I don't know if they're still with us. No. Okay. Dr. Shouki, can I
Thank you,
ask you
Mina. It is my great honor to be a part of this session, and have one of my students here today who can speak to the experience of learning through EdTech. So currently I am a teacher of English language at a high school located in a mountainous area in the north of Vietnam, where students have little chance to practice English with foreigners and limited access to global education. From my point of view, I highly appreciate the two main factors leading to a learner's success. They are motivation and learning environment with student-centered and collaborative approach. So all of my teaching methods and practices focus on these two factors with the help of technology. In 2016, I came up with MAI, which stands for Movie as Innovative Method, which I use movie to teach English to help students improve their language skills, intercultural awareness, and motivation in English. In 2018, I started employing the borderless classroom model, which enables me to connect my ethnic minority students with worldwide teachers and students to study English online with some apps like Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, and I designed the lessons with some kind of game-based apps like Quizy, Kahoot, Flipgrid, Plickr, and some other tools. This teaching practice not only enables my students to learn English with foreign teachers and friends, but they can also exchange culture, make friends, have virtual chats, collaborate with global schools in the same project, improve their intercultural awareness, and gain more confidence. So far, we have connected with hundreds of schools from over 50 countries in the world. Sometimes, teaching English grammar seems boring. So I designed the grammar tests into a live video game so that my class and global classes can play together like a live competition between country to country. So my students really love to learn grammar in this way. I can't imagine what if the technology could not assist my students and my teaching, Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as an ethnic minority student living in mountainous area, technology plays an important part in my life. Basically, technology greatly assists me to do assignment, project, update the news, entertain, search information, and keep me connected with relatives and friends. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our school employs the blended learning methods, online learning and in-person learning. Some of students in Vietnam have to climb to the top of the hills or mountain to get a better internet from their mobile phones. At my school, technology can make lessons become more interesting and effective. I can understand and remember easily with technology-based lesson, in particular with the help of borderless classroom model. My teacher has brought us to virtual global classes, which are quite far from the mountain ranges, green fields in my village. With the instruction from my English teacher, my class has conducted an international project named Anti-Cyberbullying. With the technology assistant, we could gather initiatives from experts, teachers, students from hundreds of schools in 21 countries to know how to prevent cyberbullying. We also told stories and raised our voice on Flipgrid platform. The project also created bilingual e-handbook on how to be safe on the internet. I also conducted research with the help of Microsoft Office 365. Some international virtual conference and workshops have been hosted on this topic. Significantly, we also launched an AI chatbot to support students with cyberbullying cases, published some podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts on these problems. So I feel like I really more mature and experienced. Thank you.
So while a little delayed, it was good to hear from the Vietnamese experience there, and again, the impact that a teacher can have on students. And to hear a student's voice is always good, because often we don't get to hear their take. The organizers would like us to watch one more video, which is the Zimbabwe video, to explain to us a little more about the passport learning passport from Zimbabwe. So we'll watch that video now.
Hello everyone, let us take you to a grade 6 classroom at Wesley Primary School, located in the outskirts of Harare, and see how they are using the offline version of the learning passport to learn a science lesson on respiration. Join us.
Hello boys and girls. I would like you to log into the learning passport. You are going to watch a video which clearly explains the process of breathing in and breathing out.
The respiratory system extracts oxygen from the air, a gas our cells need to live and grow. The respiratory system also eliminates carbon dioxide.
Now who can explain the process of respiration using the video that we have watched? Now you can click onto the quiz. You are going to answer 4 questions, and when you are done, you raise your hand. We are all done. Let us try to answer the questions one more time. We exhale oxygen out of our lungs as waste. Is it true or it's false? Yes, Michael? False. Get into groups. We are going to make sentences from the video that we have watched. Group 2, can you read out your sentence?
In the airplane located under the lungs, you fill the lungs with air in a process which is called inhalation.
That is the end of our lesson, boys and girls.
Hi, how did you find the learning passport lesson today?
Very interesting and easy. You get to learn a visual lesson that you hear and see what's happening to the lesson that you're learning.
How about you?
I learned that at the elevator set, they take oxygen and send it to the blood for distribution to all parts of the body, which I didn't know before I joined.
Oh wow, well done.
A great example of blended learning, not only in terms of not being in the classroom, but even inside the classroom, the use of technology and that digital linkage. Dr. Shouki, because I had asked you a question, so I feel that I must come back to you, which is to go back to the point about having these platforms and making sure there's that connectivity between different platforms. Is that something that you have tackled in the ministry as you're looking at this digital transformation?
Maybe I can get my good friend Stuck to answer this question. Ahmed, عاوز تعلق على البلاتفورمز؟
Well, I'm the Deputy Minister, just looking over the ICT and platforms. So starting 2017, we have put a lot of platforms being inherited from the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, which is like a major project gathering all the resources and content from different publishers and putting this to be available for the Egyptian students and citizens in Egypt for free. So we start gathering up those learning content, categorize that and put this in a learning management system and build a network of schools. Started with grade 10, 11 and 12. And equipping those students with devices, tablets. We have like 1.8 million students have devices, tablets, with a SIM card, having access to the network. And each school is connected with a fiber connectivity to the main data centers, accessing the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, and then availing those resources in a curated format and with a very care about adopting this with the standards of the learning styles, not to memorize but to understand. So this was one of the major shifts that's done in 2019. Adding this with another platform for the assessment, where we have like an electronic exam delivery in order just to sustain this reform part in this area, having like a succeeded of just conducting like 50 million electronic exams over this network. We are adding more digital platforms in order to just to serve other grades. We're working closely with UNICEF actually in such type of activities in order just to tap the unprivileged areas, because we have like 5,000 schools, it's community schools with in a distant area and unprivileged area, where such type of technology or of offering will help more of adopting this innovation or transformation in the education part.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that on-the-fly answer. I appreciate it. Robert, I want to come back to you briefly because you were midpoint when we transitioned to Zimbabwe. So just to come back to the key learnings from this acceleration in digital learning.
I think just to remind ourselves and Reimagine Education, all these different components. So we've got a world-class digital learning platforms part, and there's lots of examples, Learning Passport being one. We have the connectivity issue, and the CEO of Airtel Africa, my friend, just talked about how important it is that we proactively reach the most marginalized with connectivity, and so that's the second key component. There's obviously devices needs to also be looked at. Children without a device will not be able to access, whether that's a phone, a mobile phone, or computer. The important issue of affordability has been mentioned also, and we have leaders in the industry that are committed to ensure that the data across the internet is affordable, that's learning related. So again, congratulations and our sincere appreciation for the partnership with Airtel Africa and others that are welcoming us into this very ambitious agenda. So those are the components. So quickly on what we've learned, well, one is, and the minister has repeatedly mentioned the importance of it being skill focused. In the end, this has to result in changes in the children and youth in their skill level, and skill around social emotional problem solving, as the minister said, but also in job specific digital skills, etc. So we need to measure that change, and that has to be a key element of any tool that gets rolled out. And it's surprising how many tools do not measure, and so critically important. Secondly, scaffolding or comprehensive support to children and youth. I don't think nobody is claiming this is a silver bullet, meaning just put them in front of a computer and all will be well. Every child will need and youth will need comprehensive support. They'll need a facilitator, a parent to be coaching them. They'll need social-emotional support, mental health, physical, nutritional health, particularly as we move to the most marginalized. So comprehensive support. But the third and final thing I'll say, in the end, the success rests on leadership. And here we have two global leaders in this area. We have leaders at district level and at school level. And honestly, we have leaders within children themselves, the children and youth being leaders, driving themselves and inspiring the world to, and you saw some of them today. So I think that's the lessons we're taking.
Thank you. The other lesson, I guess, is when you have a hybrid model, there's also the point of maintaining that connectivity and also thinking through the impact on students, teachers, measuring, and the whole ecosystem we were talking about. Our panel has been great, and it has been great to hear voices from different parts of the world, but I have pleasure in inviting UNICEF Deputy Executive Director of Programs, Omar Abdi, who's also joining us virtually for closing remarks.
So thank you, Mina, and our esteemed guests and panelists. It's a great pleasure to join you this afternoon to you, although it's virtual. I think it only fits since we are talking about blended education. We heard this afternoon that there is an urgent need and an opportunity to transform education at a global scale. UNICEF is determined to contribute to this transformation by helping governments and parents to put digital learning opportunities in the hands of every child and every young person in the world. As Rob mentioned, we have set an ambitious target to provide digital learning solutions to 3.5 billion children and young people by 2030. So the question is, how do we do this? And we've heard some good examples this morning. Let me highlight three of them. First, to employ a variety of solutions to reach the most marginalized at scale. Solutions that are tailored to children's contexts, needs, and interests, accessible, affordable, and in languages that children understand, content that children can relate to. Digital learning can be the great equalizer of our time. Secondly, as we have seen, it's very important to empower teachers. We have seen the teacher in Zimbabwe. I know all of you here echo our admiration for the way teachers stepped up from the onset of the pandemic in adapting to new realities and delivering education in ways many of them were not prepared for. We must support teachers and empower them with the skills for digital learning, upskill and reskill the education workforce so that they can shape this education transformation. And then finally, I think the role of partnerships, and we have seen this morning. For systemic transformation in education sector to be successful, we need a diverse pool of actors and stakeholders to work together. We must maximize the synergies. We've had Mr. Ogunsanya, the CEO of Airtel Africa. We've heard the minister this morning. We've heard also the colleague from Ericsson. So partnership will be very key. Let me conclude by inviting you all to join us to reimagine education, to reach every child with digital learning and leapfrog this generation to a bright, safe, and green future. Thank you all.
Much, Mr. Abdi, and it's great to hear from you and the depth and breadth of partnerships that are required. Today's discussion is setting the benchmark for ensuring digital learning for every child. UNICEF has put that challenge to everybody, and they can contribute in their different ways. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank everybody who joined us virtually. And I just want to make sure if we have a final video or we are closing. So we have a final video, this time from Bolivia, which will be quite interesting. So let's tune in to this particular video, which is talking to us about the hope that digital learning can bring for the future from a parent and child.
Estábamos en casa y fuimos haciendo, ¿no?, algunas actividades, tal vez más que todo en cocina, preparando masitas.
¿Y también preparamos?
Y preparamos galletas, ¿no?
Y también cupcakes.
Cupcakes.
Y
también panquecitos.
Con fresas, con panquecitos.
Con fresas, con frutas. No nos gusta mucho preparar postres. También luego conocí lo que es Affini, las actividades diarias, ¿no? Son diferentes actividades que poco a poco le ayudan a mi hijito a desarrollar varias habilidades, áreas, también a pasar tiempo juntos. Sí, utilizamos lo que es el celular y también la computadora, en el cual usamos internet para ver algunos videos, también algunos cuentos, ¿no? Hay diferentes actividades también que se puede hacer. Más que todo canciones, escuchamos canciones de aprendizaje como el abecedario, los números, que es accesible tal vez en cualquier horario, porque a veces uno está, ¿no?, con el trabajo, con otras actividades. Y con eso de la tecnología tú puedes acceder tal vez a cualquier hora, en un horario que tú te fijes, que puedas estar con tu hijo.
Jugar a chess y así unos paquecitos. Hacer paquetes.
Ensalada de frutas.
Ajá. Y también
galletas con figuras.
Galletas de figuras de Zimbabwe.
Compromiso con el aprendizaje temprano de mi hijito es seguir apoyándolo y alientándolo para que siga aprendiendo y desarrollar sus habilidades.
Okay, and with that, our session wraps up. Thank you for your attention and thank you to the panel.